On the eve of the wedding, my fiancé delegated the task of obtaining our marriage certificate to a female intern, but the document I received bore the intern's name instead. My fiancé glanced at it nonchalantly and remarked, "Oh, Vivian is careless," and mixed up the registration details. "We can simply obtain a new one another day." I was incredulous that a flippant comment about carelessness could ruin my life's milestone, yet I neither wept nor protested, continuing to prepare for the wedding with composure. On the wedding day, my fiancé's face paled as he observed the groom exchanging rings with me on stage, exclaiming, "Didn't I tell you to get a new marriage certificate? You didn't do it?" With a look of regret, I responded, "It's my fault for being careless and mistaking the groom. Perhaps next time?" After Ethan uttered those final words, he stood and retreated to the study, leaving me staring at its locked door, my heart feeling as though it had been pierced, aching faintly with each breath. The 8 years of relationship I had prided myself on seemed to transform into a resounding slap across my face with the phrase, "Made a mistake." My trembling fingertips sent a message to an unmarked contact, 10 days from now, would you like to be my groom? Almost immediately after sending it, my phone vibrated twice, and the reply was a concise okay, causing my heart to sink gradually. The phone rang again with a video call from my parents, their faces beaming with joy that filled me with bittersweet sorrow as they said, "Darling, you must be thrilled today. Show us the marriage certificate." I pinched my palm hard, forcing a smile as I replied, "Mom, Dad, I accidentally left the certificate at the office. I'll show it to you next time." "How are the wedding preparations going?" "Everything smooth?" they asked, to which I responded, "Yes, very smooth, just waiting to order the wedding dress tomorrow," my eyes dropping to the glaring red certificate on the coffee table, my tone feigning cheerfulness. "Bring Ethan home for dinner sometime, your dad misses his son-in-law," they urged, and my chest tightened as I said, "Lately, he's been busy with work, we'll see when he's free." My aging parents, aware of my 8-year relationship with Ethan, eagerly anticipated our marriage, and I didn't want them worrying about me so close to the wedding. Footsteps echoed from the study, prompting me to end the video call swiftly, and the next moment, Ethan emerged with a furrowed brow, asking, "Did you complain to your parents about the mistaken certificate?" My gaze fixed on his wrist, where a refined watch with a fashionable sky blue design identical to the one worn by the intern Vivian, a couple's model, stirred a bitter pang in my heart. He had never liked wearing accessories, not even the engagement ring symbolizing our commitment, which he kept buried in a drawer, yet now he wore a couple's watch matching the intern's. I regarded him with sarcasm. Is stating facts considered complaining? And in an instant, Ethan's expression darkened as he retorted, "Ivy, haven't you caused enough trouble? Are you that desperate to marry?" My heart stung sharply as I countered, "Trouble? What trouble have I caused?" After 8 years, having spent my entire youth on him, all I sought was a certificate to affirm my identity. How had that become trouble? He frowned impatiently. "I told you the certificate can be corrected anytime. Don't you know how busy I am with work? That's why I asked Vivian to handle it. She's always scatterbrained, so mistakes are expected, yet you insist on acting this way in front of me. Don't you think you're being overly dramatic?" I clenched my fists involuntarily, the dull ache in my heart intensifying. Since the female intern Vivian joined the company, Ethan's criticisms of me multiplied. "Ivy, eat less, you've gained weight recently. Ivy, your calves are too thick. This doesn't look good. Change to a skirt. Ivy, stop being unreasonable. Don't you think you're being dramatic?" As these harsh words replayed in my mind, my heart gradually steadied. Given his actions had already revealed his stance, I no longer desired this unfaithful love. Ethan appeared to recognize his words were excessive, sighing and patting my hand gently. "All right, I'll take you to try on wedding dresses tomorrow. Just find time to correct the information at the Civil Affairs Bureau yourself." I offered no objection, nodding obediently, for indeed, my wedding with that other person required a dress as well. The next day, Ethan accompanied me to try on wedding dresses, and the sales assistant showed me the store's most luxurious satin gown, piquing my interest. Emerging from the fitting room after changing, I heard a familiar voice behind me, "Ethan. "Do I look good in this?" Vivian asked, wearing a sexy little dress, her smile radiant. My expression cooled as I demanded, "Why are you here?" Vivian twirled in place, replying, "Huh? Didn't Ethan tell you, sister? I'm the bridesmaid for your wedding." She smiled sweetly, her gaze casually sweeping over my wedding dress as she commented, "Sister, this dress is so plain, it doesn't seem grand enough for a wedding." The familiar nausea churned in my stomach again, and I turned to Ethan, awaiting his explanation. He nodded calmly. The girl loves excitement and felt guilty about the certificate mix-up, so she offered to be our bridesmaid as an apology, and I agreed. In that moment, I found it utterly absurd. Vivian's mistake with my marriage certificate was being apologized for by flaunting her bond with my fiancé in my face and serving as his bridesmaid? An indescribable weariness filled me, and unwilling to dwell on it further, I softly told the assistant, "I've tried this one, please help me remove it, I need to use the restroom." Cold water washed over my fingers as I took a deep breath in front of the mirror, reasoning that with the wedding imminent, there was no need to waste anger on irrelevant people. Returning to the fitting area after composing myself, my steps halted abruptly upon seeing the satin wedding dress I had tried on now adorning Vivian's body. She stood before the fitting room mirror, the door ajar, and through the gap, I saw Ethan encircling her waist from behind in an intimate pose, as she asked, "Ethan, how do I look in the dress sister chose?" Vivian preened in front of the mirror, her voice syrupy, while Ethan's gaze, fixed on her reflection, burned with unmasked fervor as he said, "You look better in it," his fingers absently tracing her bare shoulder. Vivian cast a triumphant glance at me through the mirror, like a cat flaunting its prize, teasing, "Naughty Ethan, aren't you afraid sister will find out and refuse to marry you?" Ethan's lips curled into a cold smirk as he replied, "Would she dare let go? An aging spinster after 8 years besides me, who would want her? She'd beg me to marry her before leaving." My fingertips tensed as I stepped forward expressionlessly and flung open the fitting room door, causing Ethan to retreat a step, a fleeting unease flickering across his face. He quickly regained his usual composure, saying, "You're back? Vivian's just childish and wanted to try your dress." I was helping her with the zipper, to which I responded, averting my eyes from the gown, "I'm a bit hungry, let's eat first." Halfway through the drive, Ethan's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and turned to me, "Something's come up at the company, I can't join you for that French meal, I'll take you home first." "No need, just drop me at the next intersection, I'd like to walk alone," I said tonelessly, gazing out the window, and once alone on the bustling street, I impulsively hailed a taxi, naming that French restaurant. As I stepped out of the car, I glimpsed a message on Ethan's phone screen from Vivian, "I'm wearing that wedding dress now, doesn't Ethan want a thrill?" Though I already knew the truth, I still went to the French restaurant, standing in the shadows across the street, where I easily spotted Ethan pressing Vivian against the familiar upstairs private room's floor-to-ceiling window, his hand gripping her wrist tightly. A white tablecloth covered the table, candlelight flickering, and Vivian's eyes were dazed, her cheeks flushed, a triumphant smirk flashing in her glance as she caught sight of me from the corner of her eye. She wore the wedding dress I had tried on earlier, confirming that this was his so-called company matter. This French restaurant, a place we visited every anniversary for its pristine setting and romantic ambience, now felt as tainted as that wedding dress, and so did Ethan. The night wind swept up fallen leaves, the air chilly, and I tightened my coat, disappearing into the deeper darkness, while Ethan stayed out all night, leaving me only a perfunctory text about overtime. The next morning, I went alone to the hotel to finalize the wedding banquet menu, only to find Ethan already selecting dishes, with a beaming Vivian by his side. He pointed at the menu, turning to Vivian, "I remember you love this steamed grouper and this crispy squab." His tone carried a familiar intimacy as he listed Vivian's preferences: no cilantro, dislikes ginger, allergic to shrimp, while the waiter scribbled quickly, leaving my heart chilled. When Ethan reached the mushroom soup, he tapped the picture casually, saying, "This looks good too, the broth is fresh enough, you'd probably like it." Unable to endure it any longer, I stepped forward coldly, "Ethan, I'm allergic to mushrooms, and he looked up at me without a hint of alarm, simply saying, "You're here?" Vivian interjected quickly, "Sister, of course Ethan remembers your allergy, he just wants everyone to enjoy the meal, you can simply skip this dish." How absurd. This was clearly my wedding banquet, yet at that moment, Ethan's phone rang, and he stood, saying, "I'll step out to take a call." He hurried out of the banquet hall, the waiter also excusing himself, leaving only Vivian and me in the private room. The innocent smile faded from Vivian's face as she leisurely poured herself tea, saying, "Sister," lifting the cup without drinking, her voice hushed so only I could hear, "Ethan remembers my shrimp allergy perfectly, yet forgot about your mushroom one." She chuckled with thick mockery, "That wedding dress, Ethan got too passionate at the restaurant yesterday and damaged it. Are you sure you want to proceed with this humiliating wedding?" As she spoke, she abruptly raised her hand without warning, splashing the scalding tea onto her chest, followed by a piercing scream, "Ah!" The tea instantly soaked her chest, steam rising as a large patch of her fair skin reddened from the burn, yet I didn't even blink, noting her ruthlessness even toward herself. The banquet hall door burst open, and Ethan rushed in, his face full of panic, shouting, "Ivy! Are you insane?" He immediately removed his jacket to drape over her, his movements astonishingly gentle, asking, "Vivian, are you okay? Does it hurt?" as he anxiously inspected her injury. He then turned to glare at me, his eyes ferocious as if to devour me. "Are you mad? Just because I ordered a dish you don't like, you attacked Vivian? The woman I'll marry isn't a jealous shrew like this," so he did know I disliked it. Sobbing in his arms, Vivian said, "Ethan, it's not sister's fault, I didn't hold the cup steady," prompting Ethan to bark at me. "Ivy, apologize to Vivian now, or you'll attend tomorrow's wedding alone." Throughout, I remained silent, merely observing Vivian's performance, and as I gazed at Ethan's once familiar yet now strange face, my heart was remarkably calm. Then, I stood, poured another cup of hot tea, and splashed it on Vivian's face, saying, "See clearly, this is me splashing it." As her screams erupted, I tossed the cup aside expressionlessly and walked away, Ethan seemingly unprepared for my reaction, failing to stop me, and I never once looked back. Returning to the villa, I was met only by darkness, the place I once called home now resembling a cold tomb. Without turning on the lights, I headed straight to Ethan's study, a room he'd barred me from entering since Vivian joined the company. My heart beat numbly, propelling me toward a truth I'd long anticipated yet still resisted confirming. Pushing open the study's heavy wooden door, I flicked on the overhead light with a click, and blinding white light flooded every corner of the room. It also illuminated the walls, bookshelves, and desk, covered with countless photos of Vivian, their number and intimacy far exceeding the boundaries appropriate between a boss and subordinate. In every photo, Vivian's smile was dazzlingly bright, piercing my eyes like a barrage of needles. My stomach churned violently, and I stumbled, steadying myself against the cold desk edge, my fingertips brushing a hard, square corner. Looking down, I saw those two mistaken marriage certificates, their red covers resembling congealed blood under the light. Everything lay exposed before me, mocking the foolishness of my years of emotional investment, his tenderness, his trust, his legal status as my spouse. None of it was mine. For 10 full days, Ethan didn't return or even call, and my belongings were packed into cardboard boxes one by one. On the eve of the wedding, I stood at the study's doorway, gazing at the glaring photos covering the walls and desk, and raised my lighter, letting the flickering flame drop to ignite this revolting room. Finally, I picked up the 2 marriage certificates, tossed them lightly into the blaze, and watched the paper curl, blacken, and turn to ash under the heat, along with the smiling faces nestled together in the photos. I stepped out of the villa, observing the flames soar within, called the fire department, and as I hung up, received a text message. The message read simply, "Apologize sincerely to Vivian before 8 a.m. tomorrow, or I won't attend the wedding," revealing Ethan's expectation that I'd submit and admit fault. I merely scoffed, ignoring the message and dialing another number, saying, "Dad," my voice unusually steady without a trace of tremor, "for tomorrow's wedding, you and Mom go straight to the hotel banquet hall to wait for me. Don't come pick me up at home." My father's concerned voice came through. "Darling, what's wrong? What about Ethan?" But I cut him off. "He's busy," my tone firm and oddly relieved. "Don't worry, everything will proceed as planned. Just go there directly, and I'll arrive on time." Before the sky ablaze with firelight, I smiled faintly, thinking, "Ethan, my groom, I hope you'll enjoy the grand surprise I've prepared for you." Sunlight streamed through the church's vast stained glass windows, illuminating the long red carpet, where I stood quietly beneath a floral arch in a simple wedding dress, waiting. My parents sat in the front row, frequently glancing back at me and anxiously toward the entrance. As time ticked by, the MC's smile stiffened, and the guests whispered among themselves. Suddenly, the church door swung open slowly, revealing a man silhouetted against the light, tall and upright, clad in an impeccably tailored black suit, walking directly toward me at the carpet's end. Murmurs erupted. "Who's that? It doesn't look like Ethan. My God, the groom's been replaced? What's happening? Is this a drama shoot?" As several Jiang family elders exchanged incredulous looks, their faces paling. The man reached my side and stood firm, extending his arm naturally, which I took without hesitation, surprised that he had truly kept his promise, soothing the last shred of unease in my heart. The visibly stunned MC regained composure, announcing, "Ladies and gentlemen, please be quiet. The wedding ceremony begins now," as the melodious wedding march played, drowning out the lingering murmurs. Under countless shocked gazes, I walked arm in arm with the man beside me to the altar, through questions, vows, and responses, until the priest smiled and directed, "Now, please exchange rings, bride and groom." The man smiled gently, lifting my left hand to place the ring on my finger, when a loud bang interrupted as the church doors were forcefully thrown open, a figure rushing in. It was Ethan, his hair disheveled, expensive suit jacket missing, white shirt collar torn open and crumpled against him. "Stop," he shouted, pushing the atmosphere of disbelief to its peak, the air seeming to freeze as he stumbled forward, eyes bloodshot, demanding, "Ivy, who is this man? Why is he here? Didn't I tell you to get a new marriage certificate? You didn't go," his questions reverberating through the church. I turned my head, feigning innocent regret, and said deliberately, "Oh, it's my fault for being careless and mistaking the groom. Perhaps next time," after which Ethan was escorted out by security. After the ceremony, the Yu family's driver took us to a top-floor apartment in the city center, where I entered, exhaustion washing over me like a tide, followed by the soft click of the door locking behind me. With my back to him, my voice hoarse, I asked, "The Jiang and Yu families are vying for that Donggang land recently, aren't they? So, you agreed to be this groom because the knife I offered could stab Ethan's heart, perfectly aligning with your interests?" I turned slowly, meeting his fathomless eyes, and Lucas chuckled lowly, suddenly reaching out to seize my waist, pulling me toward him irresistibly. "Does the reason matter?" he asked, lifting my chin with his fingers, forcing me to meet his gaze. "Now, the whole world knows your Mrs. Yu." His gaze carried a tangible warmth, charging the air instantly, my breath catching as my heart pounded wildly in my chest, prompting me to rise on tiptoes and kiss his lips with reckless resolve. It felt like seeking confirmation or igniting something to dispel the coldness within me, and Lucas's body visibly stiffened for a moment. The next second, the world spun as he took control, turning the kiss fierce and aggressive, his expensive suit jacket sliding to the floor with a muffled thud. He carried me into the master bedroom in a few steps, darkness enveloping us as my senses heightened infinitely, and after an indeterminate time, I was too exhausted to move even a fingertip, my consciousness fading. Lucas's arm remained possessively across my waist, heavy and firm, and in the darkness, he spoke suddenly, his voice hoarse yet clear, "I agreed to you not just for that land." My heart skipped a beat. This man was as wild and dangerous as he'd been 8 years ago, and before my consciousness fully slipped into darkness, I opened Facebook, uploaded a photo of the marriage certificate, and captioned it simply, "Married to Lucas." It was upon seeing that Facebook post that Ethan completely lost his mind, the phone screen glowing faintly in the dark, reflecting his contorted face. Vivian, observing his expression, cautiously held his arm, saying, "Ethan, don't be upset. I can go with you to explain to Sister Ivy that we're innocent though she hurt me once. For you, I'm willing," only for him to shout, "Get lost." Ethan flung her off with such force that Vivian stumbled into the coffee table, crying out in pain, his bloodshot eyes deaf to any words. A single thought raged in his mind: this was all Ivy's ploy to toy with him. She must be at home waiting for his apology. He stormed out like an enraged lion, leaving Vivian stunned on the floor, and sped back to the villa, where the warm lights he'd imagined were absent. Before him lay only ruins. Ethan stumbled from the car, his legs buckling, nearly falling to his knees, and by the street lamp's light, he saw the wreckage, broken walls and scattered debris. He staggered inside, his eyes frantically searching for any remnant of the past, a futile endeavor. Suddenly spotting something, he lunged forward, digging through the wet ashes with frenzied hands, heedless of the cuts to his palms. At last, he discerned a few photos buried beneath, not of him and Ivy, but of Vivian, each once treasured and hidden in the study, now, like this burned ruin, the most ironic proof. Ethan slammed his fist into the ground, the pain briefly clearing his mind, and he suddenly recalled something, searching the nearby ashes even more frantically. He remembered a small velvet box in the study's bottom drawer, containing a bracelet Ivy had woven by hand in their first year together, which he'd vowed to cherish forever, yet now he found only a blackened lump. 8 years of time, the tenderness he'd taken for granted or even tired of, the mementos he'd hidden himself, and this home that held all our past were now utterly reduced to ashes. The honeymoon was meticulously planned by Lucas to suit my tastes, a standalone water villa with endless blue sea beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, a private yacht carrying us to chase dolphins and vibrant sunsets, and a Michelin chef crafting exquisite Chinese cuisine. Lucas was a quiet yet attentive man, massaging me during migraines until I fell asleep, subtly swimming beside me during snorkeling to shield me from currents, and recounting starry tales in a deep voice after candlelit dinners. Our bond gradually deepened, revealing a tender side to him I'd once shunned. Amid the sweetness, Ethan relentlessly harassed me, filling my screen with texts, Facebook messages, and missed call alerts, each word brimming with pleas and remorse, his despair nearly spilling over. I scrolled through them expressionlessly, then decisively dragged all his contacts into the blacklist, thinking, trash belongs in the bin. Days after the honeymoon, Ethan showed up, appearing haggard on the video intercom, unshaven, drained of vitality, a shadow of the once proud Jiang family prince. Beside him, Vivian tugged his arm anxiously, pleading, and I frowned, about to call security when Lucas silently appeared behind me. He glanced at the screen, his eyes turning icy, saying, "I'll handle it," and stepped forward, but I set down my magazine, stood, and said calmly yet firmly, "No, this time, I'll do it myself." Taking a deep breath, I walked to the entrance, opened the heavy door, and was hit by the sharp stench of alcohol. Ethan's eyes lit up the moment he saw me, violently shaking off Vivian's hand. "Ivy, you've finally agreed to see me," while Vivian stumbled, her face darkening as she stood behind. "Ethan," my voice icy, "take your people and leave," but he retorted, "I'm not going," clinging to the doorframe like a lifeline, knuckles whitening from the effort, pleading, "Ivy, give me one more chance, I can't live without you." I raised an eyebrow, a cold smirk tugging at my lips, regarding him as a stranger. "Can't live without me? It was you who couldn't control yourself, you who swapped our marriage certificate for someone else's, you who took her to try my dress, and you who demanded I apologize to your mistress before the banquet. It was you who turned that so-called home into a dump I had to burn," each word a sharp dagger piercing his festering wounds, draining the color from Ethan's face instantly. My gaze shifted past him to Vivian, my tone calm. "As for you, Miss Vivian, look, this is the man you schemed so hard to take. Are you satisfied with him now?" Vivian trembled, her eyes evasive, lowering her head in shame. "I know you hate me, I deserve it." Ethan, as if deaf to my taunts toward Vivian, stared with desperate frenzy. "Give me one chance, the last one. I'll give up everything, the company, the money to Lucas, as long as he divorces you, I just want you. Let's leave here and start over, okay? I sneered, enunciating each word. Ethan, the moment you let Vivian claim that certificate, you and I were done, a sledgehammer shattering the last glint in his eyes. His hand slipped limply from the doorframe, and he stumbled back, colliding with Vivian behind him, as I shut the door without a trace of regret. All done? Lucas asked softly, and I nodded, leaning against his solid frame, feeling true relief for the first time in his presence. 3 months later, I gazed at the ultrasound report in my hands, my heart softening as the doctor said, "All indicators are excellent, madam, the baby is healthy," prompting a smile as I tucked it away, touching my belly with a strange, warm sensation. Stepping out of the clinic, my phone buzzed with a message from Lucas, "Checkup done? What do you want for dinner?" As I began to reply, I caught sight of 2 familiar figures from the corner of my eye, Ethan and Vivian, his eyes bloodshot, looking worse than the last time at the apartment door. Vivian had changed more, her belly slightly swollen, her gaze toward Ethan cautious and uneasy, and they noticed me too. Ethan's steps halted abruptly, his eyes involuntarily drifting to my slightly protruding belly. Vivian instinctively gripped Ethan's arm, her eyes dodging. "Ethan, let's go quickly." Ethan flung her hand off sharply. "Don't touch me. The thought of that bastard in your belly, father unknown, disgusts me." Vivian's face paled instantly, and seeing my happy expression, she snapped, "You curse me? What do you think you are? I just beckoned, and you forgot 7 years of love. Now you blame me entirely. You men are vile. If you weren't so useless now, would I seek other men? Abortion? In your dreams. Like dogs biting each other, a mouthful of fur." I raised an eyebrow, confirming that cheaters eventually get cheated. Slap. A crisp, loud sound rang out as Ethan raised his hand and struck Vivian hard across the face, the force sending her crashing to the ground, clutching her belly in pain. Ethan's face twisted with malice, growling through gritted teeth, "It's all you, you wretch. Without you, Ivy wouldn't have left me." Watching them tear at each other, I couldn't pinpoint my feelings, mostly relief and a sigh of ease, stunned that the man I'd loved for years had become so deplorable. When faced with issues, he didn't reflect, only venting rage on innocent women, truly laughable. Noticing my icy stare, Ethan turned and approached me step by step, his voice raspy, "Ivy, how have you been lately?" At that moment, a tall figure stepped firmly in front of me, Lucas, his hand resting gently on my swollen belly, radiating protectiveness. He tilted his head slightly, his voice warm and indulgent, "All done?" The doctor said the baby's well behaved, then brushed stray hair from my cheek, adding, "Time to go home for prenatal education, madam." Ethan's face turned ashen, a dull pain he couldn't ignore gripping his heart, realizing fully in that moment that he'd lost the Ivy who once loved him to her core. Blood pooled beneath Vivian as medical staff rushed in, and Lucas, sparing Ethan not a glance, gently guided me away from the chaos behind us. I nestled against his side, walking away step by step, and as we exited the hospital doors, the afternoon sun warmed me, my hand on my belly, knowing those painful memories were behind me, no longer tied to my life.